A little bit more light. Okay. Well, how's it going, everybody? Seek is canceled, so Stacy Morgan and Clay Buddies put this together. So I want to thank them. Oh, look, it works. Social media for Facebook is a space, then ceramics. I think the S's are backwards. I don't know. Looks kind of silly. I'm just going to wait for a couple more people to hop in here. I'm going to do Underglaze transfers. I'm going to kind of walk through the whole process from printing all the way to putting it onto a piece of mine. So I'm going to start with the silkscreening process and then work all the way over to putting the background on and then finishing it off by putting it on a barrel. So if you have questions, please put them in. How's it going? Knox? Becky? Indianapolis. So if you have any questions, let me know. This first part I don't know much about because I don't know much about the silkscreening process. I know the cursory information. I don't think this one has it, but I get my screens made from a company called Meltdown Creative Works in Bloomington, Illinois, and then I should have them start tagging up their stuff on there. And then I have them make the screens after I Photoshop a document. And what this is I'm going to print in reverse, so it's going to look normal to you until I switch to the other camera. But I'm just putting on these little rubber feet right here. These rubber feet are what going to allow it to have separation from my printing surface. In this occasion, here's my placards. These are the things that you would see on most semi-trucks. I'm from Louisiana, Rochester, New York. Wow, everybody's here. So I'm just going to kind of go through this. This is a 200 mesh screen. I fit as many images as I can, flip them so they print in reverse. And I'm just going to do the, so fitting, but I need them, the infectious disease label, which is kind of funny. I didn't really think about it until I had to say it out loud. And I'm just using masking tape. Some people might tell you to like, kind of, oh, no problem, Corey. Thanks for showing up. I just kind of go through this and put it on there. I don't leave the masking tape on there for all that long. I kind of know my spray radius at this point. You know, it's about two or so tape-wise across. So then I have this, right? And I'm going to have to block out this. That's going to annoy me all night. Hello from Washington. Washington State or Washington, Illinois? I assume that you mean state. Okay. So now let me show you. So now I have this all blocked off. And right, you see it regular, linely, but it's actually going to print backwards. This is how it's going to print. Right? No. This is how it'll print. Print backwards. So I'm going to show you my setup here real quick. Okay, so there are my screens. And then over here I have just a countertop. And it's all secure to here. And I have just some really cheap hinges from Menards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to C-clamp my screen and I'm going to square it up with my countertop. I'm just going to use these C-clamps right here. And this will make it so that my screen hinges and can get up out of my way so that I can print. please, if you have questions, ask. I'm trying to go through this so that we have enough time to get to the part that's really important, because you can purchase from a couple different people Underglaze transfers, and we all have different ways of making them, but they all transfer kind of the same way. Okay, so once that's on there, then this hinges. You can see that it hinges up and gets out of my way. Okay, this big blue pad, which is down here, is a sticky pad from Diamond Core Tools. This pad allows my paper to stick. When I first started exploring this process, I used tape on all the corners of my paper, and then I went to spray fix, and then I moved to a basement studio, and I can spray fix or not spray fix, and I'd rather not huff paint. So, because I don't do that. Aquabats lyrics. Okay, so then when my screen sets down, right, it sets down directly over that whole entire thing. Is this material? No, this is just a silk screen. This is a sticky bat from Diamond Core Tools. So it's just like a silicone mat, and it's just tacky enough that it'll hold down some material. The material I use is right down here. Old phone book pages. Maybe those will work. I have some pre-cuts that might work perfectly. Okay. So I go through this process every time I need a label. Sometimes I print more than one. Sometimes I print just one. And this is more up in this area. So the next thing is laying out where the papers go. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of set this down where I think it might work. And then I come over here, and you can see the nice thing about the text of the paper. You're welcome. Thanks for showing up. You can see the text of the paper kind of ends right through halfway, so I know that I have to move my whole label my whole piece of paper that way. So if I lift, I set it back down. Now I know, right? My paper's right here, comes past, and I'm going just past there, so I just want to move it a half inch. I need to get one of those phone holders, those gimbals or whatever. Do tracking shots. Okay. So then I can set it down there. I'm much more comfortable with that. I can see there's text right there on my line, right there on my line. These lines come into play later. Okay, now over here I have all my Amico underglazes. I use all Velvet Series Amicos, and I get them straight from the company, and I transfer them from there to these olive jars. Hey Denise. These olive jars are what I start with, and then what I do is I just pour them straight in here, and I fill it about 3/4 of the way up. And instead of doing what most people do, which is like spread it out on a big piece of glass and leave it there for a couple days, I take about, I don't know how long, but I take a little bit of time and I just microwave it. And I microwave it for 5 minutes. I let it cool down all the way to room temperature, and then I microwave it again for another 5 minutes. And I get this printing ink consistency. Make sense so far? Okay. Now, the difference between this and some other people, I don't put any extra stuff in there. Like, this is just Amico underglazes. Yes, I eat a lot of olives, I guess. I mean, I just collect them as it goes. We used to make pizzas, now we use them for salads, things like that. So, anyways, so this stuff, this gets microwaved. I have no extra additives. It's just changing the viscosity of the underglaze. And Amico was nice enough to send me over some labels so I can just throw them right on there and write down the thing. So I'm printing with Jet Black V361. Nothing's been added to it, nothing other than just microwaving it. Okay, so with this piece of paper in place, I can then take I'll show you here in a second. I'll show you how thick it is. And what I do is I try to use the manufacturer cuts of the phone book to use my registration marks, because I know those are going to be consistent every time I print. Because when I come to print, I don't, it's just a regular Expo marker too. I don't just print one or two, I just go through a run. So that run may be 50, that run may be 10, depending on what my timeline is. Okay, so this tool is a Silkscreen Squeegee. I've been told that you can use a gift card. That's how I started. I got yelled at. But I always use this corner, this sharper corner to use on the screen. So when I go to print these, I'll be using this leading corner to kind of screen across. Okay, I'm going to flip around here. I'm using Archon modes because it makes it super easy. Okay, now we're going to have to adjust just a little bit. So forgive me, but I want you to be able to see this. Okay, so my printing surface is right here. This is the label that I want to print. And like I said, it is printing backwards. It might look forward for you, but my black's a little dry. And you can use any matter of things to get the thick underglaze out. I just happen to have a palette knife. So this is the material now compared to the liquid version it comes in. Do you use it warm? No, I let it cool the second time too. I mean, if I'm in a hurry, but I mean, I don't want it to be hot and ruin the screen. So if you're a printmaker or you have print experience, this is where you should probably look away. Look away, look away. I don't have print experience. I kind of learned this all on my own. Please ask questions. This is your time to learn. So, most printmakers will say pull just straight across, maybe do one or two. I'm a little bit more just learning. A little bit more intense about it, I guess. Now, let's see how this works, because I might have to switch you. Okay, oh, look at that. So this is what I end up with. And then, I don't know if you can see this, nope, over here, but I just kind of set them to the side. Now, the reason I spent all that time setting up these registration marks is because I now know that this line and this line match up, right? Manufactured edge. I can set it right back down, and then I know it's right under where I need it to go. So I like to cut paper rather than just having paper all willy-nilly. Like I said, I'm not a printmaker. I just know that this process works for me. So I just keep using it. So I'm going to print off like 10 of these. So if you have questions or come up with something, let me know. And then I'll kind of show you the stockpile, because by the time I print off 10, I should be able to show you the next step. So I'm just lining up my paper with my registration marks. And that sticky bat that I talked about earlier just keeps that paper attached down. Yeah. Yeah, I preferenced it at the beginning. Thank you, Stacy. Shameless plugs, right? Yeah, you can see more of my work. I do some live streaming from time to time. Lining up my paper. And print, print, print. If you came in late, don't feel scared to ask questions. So there's a screen printing company in Bloomington, Illinois. I get my screens from. They're called Meltdown Creative Works. If you go to my Instagram, I have links to them, or my Facebook page. I think I mentioned them in a comment not too long ago with some barrels. Little white barrels with bubbles. Hey Deb. Hey Sarah. So that's 5, and you can see why this is an addicting process. Like, when you're in the rhythm, in the rhyme. Little cool runnings there running through my head. When you're in the rhythm, you can just get into it, and it just kind of flows. You can see it takes no time at all once you do those registration marks. Takes a little bit set up on the front end, but yeah, 200. Sorry, I think I've seen some that are 200 and some that are 220. And then I'm using Amico's Velvet Underglaze series. This is V361 Jet Black. So, any underglaze company will work. I just have a tendency to go with Amico because I like their products. They're very consistent, very readily available. Do you thicken your underglaze? I thicken my underglaze by microwaving it. I put it in this jar, and I have a low-powered microwave, and I microwave it for 5 minutes, and then I microwave it for another 5 minutes, and I let them cool in between each stage down to room temperature. And by letting them cool, I'm able to get all the moisture out of the underglazes. Some other people that do a similar process will let them sit for 2-3 days. And I'm one, not that patient, nor do I have that clean of a studio. So then I kind of make them over here. Oh, let me line up my paper before I forget and print right on my sticky bat, which I've done more times than I care to mention. So here's my underglaze, and it's just thickened, like I said, by microwaving it. There's no additional material. I'm really frugal. And I knew there had to be a way to get it to get thicker without having to put more material or spend more money on it. So all this stuff, right, the screen, my palette knife, and my squeegee can all sit for as long as I want. Unlike traditional silk screening, I don't have to clean them out right away. I've let things sit for up to a week just because I've been busy. And then I come back to it, hit it with some water, let it soak for 10 seconds, and I can wash all this off. The masking tape is the only thing of concern, right? I try to take that off as soon as I can, just so that it doesn't stick to the screen. Okay. So here's my registration marks again. Let me show you a close-up of that. Boom. Right? Used it for all 10 prints. I don't make my own screens. I have someone else make them for me. Does it dry out in the jar if it sits? No. So far, I've not run into a drying issue. So there's the 10 prints I made. I have all my color palette in printing mediums sitting on the shelf here, and they kind of just sit until I need them. 200 mesh screen. Yeah, 200 to 220, I guess. Okay, so here's my shameless plug, right? Tim Ceramics. Bam, bam. It requires way more patience than I have. So here you can see the radioactive labels. You can kind of see through the translucency. And what I'll do next with these is, the reason why they have a border is I cut right up to those borders, so that when I go to put the background color on these, when I put the underglaze over it, it ends right at those edges. And when I go to put them onto a piece, that faint line that happens from the indentation of the newsprint is then gone, because the indentation happens right where the underglaze is and where it ends, so you can't really see it. And this is kind of like my dust cover. So, where do you get the big sticky bat? You have to talk to Diamond Core Tools. They are the ones that I got it from. I asked them, I did some print demos. They also do a 12-inch one that you can kind of move around your screens, which is what I started with until they gave me this one. Well, they didn't give it to me. Bought it from them. Okay, so right here. So if this were dry, and I'd let it dry first, I cut out right on that line, and I mean right on that line. You know, I do workshops and demos, and people leave a little bit of space, and the whole point of this is that, like, this is my guideline for the end of the label that goes onto my work. Okay. Then the next part is I'll put 2 or 3 coats of my background color. Now the radioactive gets this like DeWalt yellow color that I mix up. These biohazard labels end up getting the flame orange from Amico. So you can see here. Right up to that edge. Right. I just got here. Oh, I just got the sticky pad. I haven't used it yet. They're ingenious. So what I do is I just kind of layer it up, and with the sticky pads and with the underglaze, what I'm doing is I put the first coat on really quickly, because you're putting water-soluble or a water-based product onto a water-soluble printing, so you have to be quick. Currently you have to buy the big round and then cut it down. They don't sell them like that yet. I'm trying to convince them. otherwise. So once it has 2 to 3 good coats like this, notice I let it dry. That puts a protective layer between my printed black and the background color. Right? I live in this really crazy area where I get three phone books a year. So I have them in plethora. So this is the cardboard work that I normally do. You can see that black printed surface with the yellow background. Here's an example of the radioactive. And here is an example of the infectious disease one. Okay, so the next step is to apply it to work. Now, I have already done all my cardboard for this week, so I have to switch over to barrels. I have a whole bunch of labels over here and down here that have already done the printing, already have the background coat on them. So they start off like this. This is dry, and then this one's a little faint. I should coat that again. But if we hold it up to, no, we're not going to be able to get it. Hold on, let me try something. You see that? You can see the poison skull through the underglaze. So it's just a little too faint. I'd want another coat on that probably. But then once they have that and they're completely dry, then I can rehydrate them. You can print directly onto a piece. The only problem with that is distortion when you go to form a piece. So anytime you put it onto a flat surface and then you go to form it into a cylinder or something like that, your text or imagery is going to distort along with the clay stretching. So I always put it on afterwards. So what I do is I apply all of my underglaze transfers to greenware. So here's the next step. So this is an example of that barrel with the biohazard label on it. This green part is done with a different technique. I'm just demonstrating the underglaze transfer portion of it. But these barrels are hand built. They have my little signature on the bottom, and then I'll show you how to transfer these on, right? I let all of those dry with the background. As soon as they're dry, then I can rehydrate them, and I apply them to leather hard work. Okay? And let me grab one real quick here. I'm gonna have to patch that one, so let me see here. Oh, this one's nice. Nice. Okay. Barrel shot glasses. No barrel shot glasses. Too small. I have to come up with a different labeling system. And I don't know if it's really worth my time or effort to make them smaller. Yeah. But the concept is cool, and seeing being able to use some other idea. Yeah, sure. I'm very OCD. I make trompe l'oeil work. Right, my finished product looks something like this. So I'm very OCD in the fact that I want it to look exactly how it looks. How long do those underglaze prints on the newspaper last, and do you have to store them in a special way? Good question. I've had them for up to 6 months. And here is my indexes of underglaze prints. And I can just kind of go through. Let me find one that I know I have, like the flammable labels. There's just a whole bunch printed out. Almost like packing tape. Yep, that's Amico's LG10. After testing, you probably get it to work on your stuff. It says it's rated for 04, but it has a tendency to work at a higher temperature. I fire it to cone 6-7 oxidation on a regular basis. Alright, so here's my barrel. Here's my seam. So I want it straight across from that. So usually just kind of... So there's my seam that I have lined up. Let me lower you down just a bit. So that's above the text. Okay, so like I said, this is leather hard. A couple cracks. And I'm just going to start picking a label. Since we did the biohazard one to print, I'm going to show you that. And then we'll go from there. Okay? Look at that. We have a half hour for more questions. What questions do you have for me so far? So far, so good. Don't forget, while you're watching these live streams, to go ahead and give the hearts. Not only does that help the person live streaming, but it also helps Clay Buddies get pushed up a little bit further in the algorithm. Oh, no problem, Sarah. So here's my little foam cradle. Just kind of holds my piece, and then I can take my label. You can see it's really soaking wet at the moment. Oh. And once it touches down, that's it. What's my middle name? Danger. So you can see how it's really pliable. Okay, do you throw any of your forms, or they're all hand built? Tim, you're the last, so you can stay as long. All right. Stacy says I'm the last person, so we can stay as long as you want me to. She's the boss. She's running the show remotely. So just with a regular sponge, I'm just going to go ahead and press that down. Oh, sorry, yeah. I'll give you just a second, yeah. Let me move it up. Here, you're looking straight at the bottom, not at the piece where it's sitting. I'm sorry. Who makes your silkscreens? Do they take orders? I'm sure they do take orders. They're called Meltdown Creative Works in Bloomington, Illinois. They're a really good company. They don't question how you send them screens, because once again, you have to send them backwards if you do it. Yeah, I just moved it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, so here's my label, and I'm just going to I'm going to gently kind of tap down on the surface. The barrels are always fun because they don't apply right, because they have to go over those wrinkles. No, so these were flipped over, and then I've sprayed them down prior to me starting the broadcast. This is just to help me get all this extra stuff that comes off and around the label. It allows me to help, kind of swoosh it on there. I don't know about that, Sheets. It's Nathaniel Sheets. He is my assistant most of the time. I've been missing him. You don't realize how much you miss your assistants until they're not here. So I'm just kind of pressing down. Yeah, smoosh. Smoosh. And maybe, I'm just trying to get that down in that groove. So I'm going to let this sit and kind of homogenize. So that means I'm going to let the label and the water kind of become one consistency. So I'm just going to set this aside and we're going to do the next one. What made you think of the barrels when you usually make cardboard? They're made from the same mold, and I was making tin cans. And then I had an epiphany one day that if I can make tin cans, I can make barrels. And I was playing with bubble glaze at the time. And then I went from bubble glazing to toxic waste labels to barrels. Short end of that story. So this is paper clay. It's fairly thin. It also patches and becomes, one piece again fairly easily. But this cup is a little bit drier, so I was hoping maybe we can get this one together a little bit quicker. Okay. Do you spray the back of the newsprint or the underglaze side to rehydrate the transfer? I spray the underglaze side. I spray the underglaze side. So here we go. Ready? Yeah, so my Pac-Man sponge is for two things. It holds on to things, and then if you give me hearts, Pac-Man gets to eat all the hearts. See how you can eat the hearts? I can give you the proportions I use for my paper clay. I will not give you my particular clay body recipe. I'm a little protective of it. Yeah, see, now you're hearting, and now he eats. It's a slurry of your clay body without paper, with about 25 to 30% paper pulp that has been soaking for a while. The clay body is paper clay, yes. So I'm just going to grab another one of my labels. Since I started printing out the biohazard labels, I'm going to continue to put them on during this demonstration. Yeah, right? I love my little Pac-Man guy. And like I said, once he's down, he's down. He doesn't really go anywhere. I can't lift him up and move him around. It's kind of just there. A lot of times what people do during workshops is they'll want to hurry this process along. This part of the process is probably the most time consuming and the part where you have to have the most patience. Right, and then after I get that down a little bit, then I can start really getting these edges down. Making sure that there's no underglaze that's coming out from the edges. Okay, now, what is your firing temp? My firing temp is cone 6-7 on a normal basis. These barrels won't be fired any higher, but when I do my cardboard work, and hopefully in June, I'll be able to go fire with Justin Rothshank and fire at his wood kiln, and we take that to cone 12, I think. Okay, now let's see here. Let's go back to this one. It's had a little bit of time to dry out. You can already tell the paper's a little bit drier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start, and you can either start in the middle and work out and then come back to the middle and work out this way, or you can work from one edge to the other. I don't think it makes much difference, or I haven't noticed that it does. And what I'm going to test is right here when I get to this edge is whether or not underglaze comes out. And this is just a rubber tip tool. You can get this to focus. You can see how much I've worn down this rubber tip tool over the years to get it to do what I want it to do. And when I get a little squish, all right. No, it's just a rubber tipped like a Sculpey tool. That's the only thing I can ever think of that they are. I don't really know what they're called. So it's just kind of what they are and what's going on with those. But this just helps me get down into the lines of things and really start to make sure that those underglazes are making those connections with the seams and the creases and getting those air bubbles out. And this is just still a little too wet. So we'll hop back over to this guy. So like I said, this guy was super dry. I have a big damp cart where I put all my greenware, and this was sitting right in front of the door, so it dries out the most. Okay, and once I get those areas down, then I have to be a little bit rougher with these. It's what I'm affectionately calling my boomstick. Just trying to get all that attached. You can leave the paper on and let it burn off. The problem with it is you don't know what has attached and what hasn't. So we're going to do this really tedious process next, which is peeling up the underglaze label and making sure that the parts I want on there are sticking. Yeah, I hate my love of attention to detail. It stops me from boomstick, my boom. It's the thing that makes sure that all my labels stick where I want them to stick. It's when the rubber tip goes out. You notice I keep wiping any extra little bit of underglaze. Hey Debbie, how's Louisiana going? Thank you all for joining and helping make Clay Buddies a really good success for their demo week, workshop week. Remember to hit those hearts and the likes and the shares. That really helps Clay Buddies get a little bit more visual presence to anybody that might have missed it. Also helps push up algorithms. And if you would, jump over to Instagram or even Facebook. I do a lot more of my stuff on Instagram at Tim's Ceramics, Tims Ceramics, plural. Just give me a like. It's really nice. Well, that's a really deep bit right here. So deep, look, that the paper's ripping because it can't flex that much. Okay, so we're going to try this. Yeah, no problem, Stacy. So here's where everybody just wants to rip it off. Hold on, let me get my Instagram paper so you can look at it and write it down. I'll just hang out in the background. Right? Okay, so this is where everybody wants to get, like, really quick about what's going to happen next. And this is where you have to have the most patience ever. Because we're not going to rip it off like a piece of tape. We're actually going to go, thanks, sheets. I know, right? You don't want to do that, though. You got to go slow. And the reason you want to go slow is if a part doesn't stick, then you can set it back down. Oh, sorry then. Okay, well, sorry. I apologize. I just don't want people going to my personal Facebook account. Because that's what this looks like right now, is that they go to my personal Facebook account. So if I go slow, and I start to peel this up, right, I can see what's not sticking and what's sticking. Yeah, right? Don't self-promote. I pull out a sign. I just know that people like to follow along. And then they also like to send me friend requests to my personal stuff. So that's how it shows up. And so then I go nice and slow. Right? This is like the tedium of this process. And notice how I fold the paper back over. How I fold the paper back over on itself. This is the best way that I've found. And see that part up there? Right here. I want to make sure that I just kind of get that down. Make sure that's nice and stiff. Okay, and then see how I got that to come back. I'm going to go nice and slow, and now is where I have to decide, because I like to make my work look like garbage, is I have to decide every time I pull this up of whether or not, like, this little spot, do I want that little spot on there, or do I want to let it go? And if I want it back on there, all I have to do is kind of flip this here, then rub, and then I can peel it back, and if it doesn't work, I can just rub. I need just a little bit of water. Nope, still missing it. Yeah, my craftsmanship is alright at best. This paper even has the word epidemic on it. It's funny. Yeah, right? If I can't get it, I usually just let it go. Like, it's not a big, huge ordeal. Go. And then as I start to pull, slow pull. So I want to make sure, like, there's that, like, little bit of, like, chattering line that's happening on this one. I want to make sure that's there if I want to fill that gap back in right there. Too soon. Too soon. Hey, it's not my fault. This is just what was on the paper. I've been making these labels, and this is just what the label is. And see, I can fill that back in. So right here is the only problem where I ever have an issue. So when I go to sand this, I'll just sand this little piece off the bottom. But see, this little guy, he needs to get fixed. Like I said, this is paper clay, so it'll take some abuse. Okay, you ready for number 2? I have to come back to that. Okay. So here's the next one. Next one, start off the same way. Where is, it's behind my ear. So just kind of rub. And with these, I'm a little looser with how much attaches. I really just want it to attach on the high points, because I want to be able to come back in later and just... paper clay helps me with my cardboard pieces just to make them look a little bit more realistic. And then, of course, because that's my clay body I'm using in the studio, it's just kind of the thing I use. So, Tim, this has been really cool. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Okay, be safe out there. So then I just try to make sure that it gets a little bit in those creases down at the edges. Oh, big thanks to Clay Buddies for putting this on and having everybody show up and making a schedule. Thanks to Stacy for, it seems like you're right on top of it, so thanks for doing this. No, I hand build everything. Yeah, I can. I hand build. See these little spots right here? They're so wet still that I can set them back down and let them go, but I'm not willing to fight with it. Like I said, I like to be a little bit looser with these cans. Well, thank you, Ruby. We have about 4 more minutes left. Do you have any questions for me about any part of the process? I fold the paper back because it seems like to me that it makes a cleaner takeaway. So like when I'm ripping the paper, I fold it back like this, and I pull it off the surface, so that when I'm pulling back, no, so I'll go back in and I will use a saturation metallic glaze, which is this shiny grayish color, and it's the liner glaze and the outside glaze, and then in between where the bits and pieces don't stick, for this particular part, I'm doing a little bit of lots. I'm pouring, I'm brushing, and I'm spraying. Just depends on what part. How do I make the transfers? You'll have to wait for this to stop, and then you can restart it and replay it from the beginning. And then you can see how I make these. But they're Silkscreen Underglaze transfers that are they're backwards originally, and then they go ahead and attach the greenware like I've been demonstrating here. Any other questions? Thanks. Thank you. Yep. Any other questions before I head out? Yeah, Nadine, just go back to the beginning and watch from the beginning. I show you the entire process, right? I mean, it doesn't shrink this much. This is just a different level. So, have fun the rest of the week. Yep, these are food safe. Yep, for sure they are. Yep. Have a good rest of the week. Stay safe. What's my typical making schedule? I make whenever I have any time at all the times, and then I have Nathaniel Sheets as my assistant, and he helps me out in the studio, and he makes a lot. Are these coffee cups? No, these are tumblers. How thin is the clay? It is super duper thin. My bisque firing I take to 04. Yeah, Sandra, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching the replay. I do not make it. I use Amico's Saturation Metallic PC1 is the metallic glaze for that. Understand immediately. Nice. Okay. Any other questions? Do you want to see one more? What do you want to see? Because I am the last presenter of the day, so I can do one more. You're welcome. Good time. Thanks, Joan. Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Jody. Anything else before we all bail? Going once. One more. Okay. There we are. One more. Uno más. Uno más. Okay. So this is how it starts. So here you can kind of see the thickness of my clay. Put put it in my little baby cradle. I always make sure the seam's, right here so that I know this is the top surface. Little tap, 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 tap. Just get that spongy surface way down in there. So what this is doing is helping the underglaze attach to the clay body. No, so I sprayed them earlier with water. So they're just sitting over here ready for me to kind of pull off and put onto a piece. Yeah, so this is just one way of doing what I do. If you want to look at Justin Burnett's work, he uses a lot of underglaze transfers. I think it's pretty amazing to see how different people use this process and how clean or not clean they want to do it. I'm a very I don't know. I like to make garbage, so I like my transfers to not be so clean. Yes, I silk screen them onto the newsprint. Yep. If you wait and then go back and watch the replay later, you will see the entire process. I kind of go through it, I think, pretty sufficiently. Yeah, this piece is leather hard. Just using this rubber tip tool to get it down into the grooves. I want to try to get as much to attach as I can. I'm not going to be super worried about the clarity of it in the end, but I want the option there because I will also come back and sand in greenware. Why do I like to make garbage? I find it very interesting the history that a piece of garbage can hold. Something that we want to throw away. It has this whole narrative, this whole life that it's gone through. And it's usually commonly overlooked. There's this really neat Animaniacs clip called Gift of Gold, which, really exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about. But it follows this piece of wrapping paper across, from the department store to the garbage can, or to the kid that rips it apart, to the garbage can, to flying out of the back of the garbage can, to landing in the river, to getting hooked by a fisherman, to landing on a wiper, to getting used for chewing gum, and it ends up being very precious to this young little boy, this little piece of wrapping paper. And that's kind of how I think about garbage, I guess. Has all these indicators of the path it took to get to where it's at. And it's kind of a poetic story. It has this, I do not have a Periscope channel, Sanja. I have an Instagram. No, so that's inside my mold. My press mold. So that's just a way for my signature to show up, and also look like it's part of the work without me having to, like, I don't know, sign the work like it's already there. If that makes sense. Garbage is full of stories, and you see it on all of, like, murder mystery shows. They're like, go through his garbage, and it's like, why would they go through the garbage? Well, okay, so here's the important part. Slow peel, right? Back on itself. I'm not pulling straight up, I'm pulling it back on itself. And every time, the reason I pull slow is then I can determine, ooh, do I like that didn't transfer, or do I like it? Like, I get to decide every step of the way. I like that piece right there. That's alright with me, I guess. Not too scared. Yes, this transfer process is really fun. It's fairly simple. You can do it mono printing. You don't have to have a silk screen. You can just do it mono printing style. You know, I've been talking a lot lately with my friends, and they've been calling me a printmaker, and I'm like, I don't think so. But I take a lot of things from printmaking, so if you're at all interested in printmaking. So I have just my Pixel 3 on an Archon mount. That yellow is pretty fantastic. That's Amico's just regular yellow. It's not even their intense yellow. So yeah, so my Archon mount is right here. I have the magnet and then the articulating arm, and this particular one's on a stand. And if you let me get up, I'll show you the whole setup of where I'm sitting. So there's my little workstation. I have dry labels behind me, soaking labels there. All of my work is just kind of hanging out in the damp hut. Then I have a working table here in my reclaim. 200 to 220 screen mesh. It's all over here. Boom, boom. And there's labels getting done. Those are the labels I did earlier. Is what jet black? The printing? Yes, it's the V361 jet black from Amico. No, you don't need to see me. No, we're about to process the workshopping here, so if you want to see more, you can find me on social medias and whatnot. Anything else? We'll give it just a little bit of time for you guys to type in any last questions. Make sure as you watch them throughout the week to give extra hearts while you're watching. That helps the algorithm pick up the live streams, which helps Play Buddies in general. Do it all again. Yeah, hold on. Let me do this real quick. Okay. You can try it at the 110. I haven't tried it. It might be too fine at 110. No, that's more open. Depending on how thick your underglaze is, it might work. Yeah, no problem. Alright, well, it sounds like we're all good. Take care. Thank you if you're watching the replay. Make sure you see it all. If you have any questions, make sure you send them my way. I'll be happy to answer them, and I'll try to be timely about it. But that flame orange is always great. Thank you. Yep, you too, Nadine. Be safe. Stay good. Keep your spirits up. We'll all get together again sometime soon.